Welcome to the Get in the Fight podcast. My name is Nate Whitson, and I'm the founder of Get in the Fight Ministries and our exclusive online fight club for Christian men. Everything we do here is dedicated to helping Christian men become the men that God meant for them to be. So if you're looking for helpful content and conversations that can help you to grow and become the man that God made you to be, then you're in the right place. But before we get started, please do me a huge favor and be sure to subscribe, click the like button, and then leave us a 5-star review. Doing that helps us to reach more men who are looking for content just like this. Also, if you'd like to learn more about our mission and how to get involved or how to join the Fight Club, then head on over to getinthefight.club. That's getinthefight.club and learn more today. But without further ado, it's time to get in the fight. So let's go. Hey, what's up, guys? This is Nate Whitson with the Get in the Fight podcast. Welcome to episode number 56. Excited to share with you guys today some things that I think are important conversations for men who are looking to live bigger lives, men who are looking to live more connected to the purpose for which God has made you. We talk about this a lot here, but if you're a man who is going through the motions, going to church, but your heart's not in it, finding yourself at a place where you're just going like, I don't know what's missing. I know there's something else out there. I know that there's more, but I really don't know what it is. What I would say to you today that I recognize in my own story, my own journey, and that of the men in our community here called Get in the Fight, is that when you are disconnected from the purpose for which God has made you, if you don't know what that is, if you don't know how to even identify what that might be, you will have an ache in your soul. You will have that feeling of there's something missing. And so in our community, it's a free community for Christian men around the world to gather to focus on being men of honor and discipline, strength and joy. And we realize that we have to fight for that. That's why we call it Get in the Fight. For a lot of men, we're going through the motions, like I was saying. We're going through life just kind of with our blinders on. We're focused on, good things, but maybe not best things, right? And I think that's a big temptation for a lot of us as Christian men is we realize that pursuing family is good. Pursuing a career is good. Helping our kids get to have cool experiences, good. But is that what we're really here for? Is there more to the story than just the way that we're going about it? For a lot of us, I think we find that all of these good things are good, but they're not ultimate. We've made good things ultimate, and deep inside our soul, we are struggling with going, why is this good thing, this good life that I'm living, not satisfying like I thought it would? Well, again, we are trying to get connected to the purpose for which God has made us. And we say it here, like we want to help Christian men to live bigger and better lives and become the men that God meant for them to be. And so in today's conversation, if that's you, if you feel that tugging, that wrestling, that tension, number one, check out our community. Getinthefight.club is the website. You can check it out. You can learn more there. We do one-on-one coaching for men. We do this online app and community where we gather every day and just give you all the tools and things that you might need on a daily, weekly, and monthly basis. Check it out. It's pretty cool. But if nothing else, if just listening to today is a part of your connection with us, that's great. We welcome you, and we want to help you to live that bigger, better life. And we want to talk about that today in light of 3 relationships, right? So I want to talk about relationships today, but maybe in a way that isn't as obvious as it sounds at first glance. So when you're in a relationship, it's about this connection and this behavior between 2 or more parties. That's really the definition of a relationship. It's how you're connected to someone or something, and it's how you behave in response to that connection. And so the 3 areas that I want to look at today really quickly are time, money, and eternity. Time, money, and eternity. And we're going to talk about the relationship that we have as Christian men with those things. And I don't think a lot of us think of it that way as, a relationship with money, a relationship with time, or a relationship with eternity. And yet, what I think we'll see is that we really are connected to these ideas more than we think. I want to look at some passages from Scripture to see what God's perspective is, on these 3 areas. And then I want to talk about maybe just some things for you to think about today, and then some practical steps to help us to be more aligned with how God wants us to view these relationships. Okay, so let's jump right in. Let's talk about money first. Going to the scriptures here, Proverbs 3:9 and 10 says this: "Honor the Lord with your wealth, with the first fruits of all your crops. Then your barns will be filled to overflowing, and your vats will brim with new wine." Matthew 6:24 says, "No one can serve two masters. Either you will hate the one and love the other, or you will be devoted to the one and despise the other. You cannot serve both God and money." And one more for you today. 1 Timothy 6:10 says, "For the love of money is a root of all kinds of evil. Some people, eager for money, have wandered from the faith and pierced themselves with many griefs." When you look at those three passages here, we talk about money and wealth and possessions. And in the first proverb that we looked at here, we see that we are to honor the Lord with our wealth. Think about that. We are to give back to him for what he has given to us. So when you think about your relationship with money, there is an honor code to this for Christian men. It is where we recognize that everything we have comes from him, and that is the connection with money. This is not ours. We are given these things from him, from his generosity, from his barns, and then from there we have a relationship and a connection with money where we need to be not controlled by it like we see in Matthew 6:24, but in control of that so that our devotion to God isn't off base, right? The connection with money is about a connection and a behavior towards God, right? When we're talking about a relationship with money, we're really talking about a relationship with God. Understanding how to handle money well is really a reflection of understanding your relationship and your connection with God. All money, all blessings flow from our Father above. And in that, he gives us enough to fill our barns. The question that we have to ask is, why does he give us, oftentimes, for most of us listening to this, more than we actually need? Isn't that an interesting way to think of money? Most of the time, we're saying, why don't I have more? And yet, when you think about it, why does God give you more than you actually need? What kind of God do we serve who actually blesses us with more? And what does he want us to do with the more? When we look at that passage in 1 Timothy 6, it talks about the love of money. We talk about how that love is like a root that grows deep down into our heart. There's a relationship connection here with our heart and with our worship. And what happens sometimes for us is that we get mastered by wealth. We have extra and we want more and more of the extra. And we then lose some of our devotion to God, and we lose a devotion to his purposes for the extra that we have. So questions for us to consider when you think about your relationship with money today is, how do you view money? Many of you probably have never stopped to even question that. Like, what do you mean? How do I view money? Well, answer the question sometime. Take a minute to just maybe even pause this right here and just say, how do you view money? Whose is it? What is it for? Why has God given you more than you need? When you start to really wrestle through that today, you realize that, again, there is a relationship that you have with money that has the ability for you to behave in a certain way according to what you say. Maybe even more importantly than what you say is what you believe. See, if you believe that all money given to you is because you have earned it, you've gone to work, you are super smart, you are the one that went and got a college degree, you are the one that works 60 hours a week, you, if that's the way that you think about money, you will behave accordingly. See, your generosity will flow or dry up based on your relationship and connection with money. Remember, a relationship is about this connection to something and how it causes you to behave. Well, you are in a relationship with money, and your belief about money matters greatly. How do you view money And how are you using money today? See, the biblical perspective that's important for us here, and again, we're not going to deep dive any one of these three areas of money, time, or eternity, but I want to give you some quick thoughts. The biblical perspective for financial stewardship and honoring God and honoring the purpose for which you are here on this planet is that you say, all things are His, and I am a steward of all of those gifts. I am a steward of money in this particular case. I'm also going to be, as you'll see, a steward of the time that God has given me, right? So when you are in a proper belief pattern and you are believing correctly according to God's perspective, then you will behave in certain ways that align with why He has you here and why He has given you what He's given to you. How do you view money, and how are you using it today? Where does God fit into that? The perspective from Scripture is God is number one, His kingdom first. We see Jesus pray that your kingdom come. We see that Jesus was like, not my will, but your will be done. Jesus was also saying, I only did what I saw the Father do or what the Father told me to do. Now, if God is King and Savior and ruler in your life and in my life, then our perspective ought to be like Christ in that way with money. We ought to say, it is all from your hand. It is all for your glory. It is all for your kingdom first. And yet, what we find is upon closer examination, most of us men really feel like money is ours, right? We somehow have separated this connection between God and money as if worshiping God is on one side and how I handle money is just a separate earthly issue, and they're not. I think deep down we probably know this. I doubt somebody's hearing this and going like, wow, I've never thought of that. Maybe you have. I doubt it, though. The reality, though, for you is or let me say it this way. The reality is your perspective about money drives your behavior, and does your spending or use of money align with God's perspective? That's really the question for you here. And here's the takeaway. Here's the practical side of this. What I would say is look very closely at your money, your spending habits, and create a budget that really will help you to better align with God's perspective. Your relationship with money drives so much of your life. Again, we're going to talk about time here in a second. But so much of the time that you spend as a man is typically spent trying to create wealth. It's trying to get out of debt and do some other good things. What I would tell you, though, is when you start to align your budget and your spending according to biblical principles, it will challenge you. Are you spending dollars the way that God would have you spend dollars? And again, we only looked at just a few verses. You could look at lots and lots. Jesus spoke more about money than any other topic, which is very telling. Your heart, your relationship with money drives so much of your behavior and mine. And so if you want to take a very practical biblical approach to handling this relationship, what I would say is look closely at how you're spending, and if it is not properly aligned with God's kingdom before yours, and this isn't, by the way, just about tithing. This isn't just about doing that, but tithing is simply a response of worship to put things in the proper order for how God wants your heart to be aligned. When I pay God back first through giving generously, it just simply keeps my heart in check with whose this really is. And so there's some critical factors. It's not really the amount, it's the attitude and the heart behind the giving. And it's this constant weekly reminder that this is about your kingdom, and I want to honor you with my wealth. I want to be devoted to you and nothing else. And how you spend money helps you in that relationship. Hey guys, I hope you're enjoying the show so far. And if you are, please do me a big favor and simply get engaged in a simple way. For you, that might be clicking the like button or maybe subscribing to the show. For others, it may be commenting on a show that really stands out to them, or maybe it's just copying the URL and texting it to a friend, or pasting that into your social media, or sharing it via text, whatever it is. All of those things make a huge difference for us, and it helps us to reach more Christian men, who are trying to live bigger and better lives. So, number one, thank you for being a listener, and thank you for being a part of this community and part of this show. We appreciate it more than you know, and we appreciate you getting engaged and helping us out. Thanks so much. Now back to the show. Okay, so let's move to your relationship with time. Consider a couple passages here. The first one in Ephesians 5:15 and 16. It says this: "Be very careful then how you live, not as unwise, but as wise, making the most of every opportunity, because the days are evil." Look at Psalm 90, verse 12. "Teach us to number our days, that we may gain a heart of wisdom." In Colossians 4, verse 5 says, "Be wise in the way you act towards outsiders." And here's that phrase again that you've already heard: "Make the most of every opportunity." I want you to think about your relationship with time right now. Depending on your age, you are approaching time differently for sure. You know, if you're a young man listening to this and you're in your 20s, early 30s, we tend to think in those times, those gaps of time, that we've got a long time to go. It's kind of like being a freshman in high school and you're playing sports and you're like, man, I've got like 3 or 4 more years and it feels like I've got a long time here. Then all of a sudden you're a senior playing in your last year and you're like, where did the time go? It went so fast, and you consider it so differently. You know, if you're in your 60s or 70s, it's kind of like being a senior in high school. You're just like, man, where did this time go? It just flew by. I'm at the recording of this almost 47. I'm 46. Almost 47, and I certainly, in this, what we might call like, you know, mid-age range here, feel young and yet feel like time has flown, feel like I'm learning to number my days better in my 40s than I did in my 20s and 30s. I realize so quickly as we start to see loved ones age and we go to more and more funerals and we lose friends and loved ones, that, man, time goes so quickly. We hear stories all the time of people who have, you know, died unexpectedly. In fact, there was a story online, somebody that I knew only through online, but it was just one of these shocking stories where he's posting one day and the next day you're seeing these stories of just, he's no longer with us. The longer we live, hopefully what happens is our relationship with time gets more aligned with God's perspective of it. You know, we all know the idea that this life is a mist. We all know that it could be over quickly, and yet we act like, and this goes back to the idea of relationship, our relationship and our behavior with time is one where it seems like we act like we've got a long time to go. You know, at 46 and working in financial planning, I know some of these things about mortality tables and all of the rest, and I go, gosh, if mortality tables say that I live to be 85, that means I've got almost 40 years to go. But what am I missing when I say that or assume that? I'm assuming that I know God's story for my life. Do you know that before you were even born, that there was a timeline for you with an ending point that you don't know when that is? You don't know if that'll be today, tomorrow, or 40 years down the road. And so this relationship, I guess that I'm saying, there's this relationship that we have with time really controls so much of our behavior. Think of it like this. Let me put it this way. Imagine that I told you that you have 5 days left. Imagine if you knew that your time was so short. How would you behave and treat your relationship with time if you knew for sure that it was that short? Well, you would act very different, wouldn't you? You would probably not be engaged with harmful things like pornography or drugs or, you know, improper relationships and all that. You would all of a sudden get very sober-minded, and everything that actually mattered would really matter ultimately because you knew that your time was limited. You would be very wise with the way that you acted toward outsiders, and you would, as Scripture said that we just read, you would make the most of every opportunity. You probably would try to not sleep at all because you were just so focused on making sure that you were spending your time wisely because your days were numbered. Well, you probably know where this conversation's going, and it's an important one to what Get in the Fight is all about. We are trying to focus on becoming the men that God meant for us to be, and one of the realizations that we have to have is that we don't know how much time we have. A lot of us have said, you know what, someday I'll get in better shape. Someday I will fix this bad relationship that's out of whack. Someday I will forgive that person. Someday I'll work on my finances. Someday I'll do this. Someday I'll do that. And yet scriptures are clear. We don't know how many days we have left. And so we must live in such a way that we take advantage of the time that we have. And in fact, what I try to encourage guys to do, and again, I'm not perfect in this. I'm not the example necessarily, but I'm trying hard in this. I simply want to try to live in such a way that I make the most of today. I can't worry about how yesterday went. In fact, if yesterday didn't go well and I didn't spend my time making the most of every opportunity, if I didn't prioritize his kingdom first, if I didn't use money wisely yesterday, all of that is in the past. I can't worry about tomorrow. I can't prioritize all of my time thinking about the future because I don't know if the future ends today for me. So what I have to do is say, God, I want to fight for today. I want to make today the day that I choose you again. I choose to follow you. I choose to live for you. I choose to be a man of honor and discipline and strength and joy, our 4 principles. I want to choose that today. And guess what? If God gives you more days, and if every one of those days was a day of just pure focus, and you said, I'm going to spend my time wisely today, you will find yourself at the end of days being grateful for how you spent your days. That's just the reality of it. And so my question to you is, how are you prioritizing and spending your time today? Are you spending it and prioritizing it wisely or foolishly? Is it about you or the purpose for which you're here? How are you spending and prioritizing your time? Does your use of time align with the way that God would have you use it? Think about this word. How intentional are you with your time? You know, the takeaway that I have here is that we use 4 principles that we talk about all the time: honor, discipline, strength, and joy. But we also look at and try to build off of 8 habits. And one of those habits, habit number 2, is what we call pre-decide. Pre-deciding is where a man says, I'm going to determine what really matters most, and then I'm going to schedule my time accordingly. So think about it this way. If a man pre-decides and says, God's perspective is the perspective I want to take with how I spend my time and how I spend my money, then I'm going to pre-decide before I start this day what matters most and how I need to spend that time, how I need to spend that money. That's really what we're trying to do here. We're pre-deciding to follow Jesus with our time and with our money. And the best way to do that is with a budget and with a calendar, right? These aren't like mind-blowing things, but if you actually embrace the basics like this, you would be better, living a better life. You would be living a bigger life. You would be more aligned with the life that God has for you here by simply creating a prioritized and intentional budget and a prioritized and intentional calendar. So today, just think about your day. If you know that the most important thing for you today is to be close to God, then maybe the first thing on your calendar should be time with God, time in His Word. Maybe you're listening to worship music. Maybe you're just taking a walk and just letting Him speak where you can just freely listen, right? But you're communicating with Him and you're communicating to yourself that the calendar will control what matters most. And so the first priority is spending time with Him. Maybe the first priority when it comes to your budget is giving back to your local church, giving back and serving, with the first fruits of your wealth, right? You can understand this here. There's a connection and a behavior, a relationship that you have with time and with money. And the real issue is being intentional with it, prioritizing God's perspective over yours. If you will do those, my thought is that you will live a bigger life. You'll live a better life, a more fulfilled life. In that ache that we talked about in the beginning, where a guy's like, gosh, I'm doing good, but something's missing, that ache, I think, slowly diminishes. I think there will always be that ache for eternity because God's put that that desire in our hearts. Like, you'll never be fully satisfied here. It's never going to fully do that for you, because we are waiting and eagerly looking forward to our redemption. We are looking forward to our forever home. So there's always going to be that missing element a little bit. But a big part of that dissatisfaction that we feel as men is because we've put our intentional living out of balance with the way that God wants it to be. So, money, prioritize, be intentional with how you look at money and how you spend money, and understand God's perspective with what he thinks about money. Number 2, when you look at your time, be intentional and prioritize each and every day. I know that sounds really simple and easy. In some ways it really is. You, though, if you got intentional and prioritized your time, you would end up saying something really important to all these good things that come. You would say no, right? If you got intentional and prioritized how you spent your time, and you thought, you know what, I'm going to make the most of today, that might mean saying no to overtime and maybe making progress in that area of your life, because the more important thing was being there for your kids while they live in your home, being there for your grandkids, being there for your wife, whatever that might be, right? And I'm not saying that you should not do some of those things, right? You've got to use wisdom here, but prioritize how you spend your money, prioritize how you spend your time, and be intentional with your budget and with your calendar. Okay, last thought here is on eternity. What is your relationship like as a man with eternity? Listen to just a couple of passages from scriptures here. Matthew 6:19-21 says this: "Do not store up for yourselves treasures on earth, where moths and vermin destroy and where thieves break in and steal. But store up for yourselves treasures in heaven, where moths and vermin do not destroy and where thieves do not break in and steal. For where your treasure is, there your heart will be also." 2 Corinthians 4:18 says this: "So we fix our eyes not on what is seen, but on what is unseen, since what is seen is temporary, but what is unseen is eternal." John 14:2-3, last one, says this: "My Father's house has many rooms. If that were not so, would I have told you that I am going there to prepare a place for you? And if I go and prepare a place for you, I will come back and take you to be with me, that you also may be where I am." When you think about eternity, how does it make you behave? What is your connection to forever? You know, for a lot of us, I don't know that we feel very connected to it at all. I don't know about you. I don't know where you're at today. But I know that we can get so wrapped up in focusing on time and money that we often don't ever think, not like with any real depth about forever. It's kind of like, it's this mystical thought that's just so far out there that we don't know how to put our minds around it. So we just don't. We just don't think about that. But consider this, and maybe you've heard this said before. Those who have made the greatest impact in the here and now and on this earth are those who are most heavenly, eternally minded. Why would that be true? If that's true, why would that be the case? Well, the reality is we behave based on what we truly believe. See, they are so convinced, these eternally minded people, that this life is short, that they thought there's nothing more valuable here on this earth than living for the next. And so that meant that their behavior then was one where they really made the most of every opportunity. They were bold in sharing the gospel, because what's the worst that could happen? What, somebody's going to kill them? They're like, big deal. I'm going to live in eternity. If they kill me, they kill me. I'm going there anyways. They just speed up that process for me. Those who were eternally minded were really geared towards serving so well here. They were not consumed with wealth, because they're like, look, I don't even take this with me. What am I going to do with all this extra? I'm going to give and be generous and share as much as I can. They were generous with their time. Why? Because they knew it was brief. They knew that everything in this short little window that we call time is this test that will determine forever and ever. And if you want to pass that test and you want to receive as many rewards as could happen when God reveals these rooms that he's been working on and creating since the beginning of time, if you are looking forward to that more than building a room in a house for you here, then you behave in such a way that puts God's kingdom and his desires before your own. I just want you to think for a minute about that. How often do you think about forever? How often does eternity come to mind? And what would happen if you spent more time thinking about what's to come? How different do you think you might live if you really, really, truly believed that this life was over quickly and that making the most of the time and the money that you have would impact forever and ever and ever and ever and ever? I know that the idea of forever for all of us is impossible to fully grasp, but I think it's more possible to grasp than we've given it effort, right? Like if we spent simply more time thinking about heaven, thinking about our eternal home, what would happen is that we would start to fix our eyes on what is eternal more than what is seen. But when we don't think about eternity, it's the exact opposite, isn't it? When I don't think about eternity, I start to fix my eyes only on what is seen, what is right before me. This is where I start to then build my own barns and fill them. And then all of a sudden God says, look, your time is out. You've spent all this time worrying about your relationship with money and wealth. You've spent all of your relationship with time building wealth and dealing with maybe even good things, but not ultimate things. And then he ultimately says, for that person, you're a fool. In light of eternity, you are a fool if the relationship that you have with time and with money is out of balance and not eternally focused. You are a fool. Our beliefs here in this short little breath of life that we have will impact forever and ever and ever. See, I think that we need to spend more time relating to the idea of eternity and thinking about how eternity is impacted by the way that we spend our time and spend our money. I want us just to simply think about that today. This is just a brief intro conversation to this. If you've never read the book, by the way, Heaven by Randy Alcorn, I highly, highly recommend it. It's one of my favorites. It's kind of a heady book. It's thick. It's a big book. But again, think about like how many times do you ever even hear conversations about eternity or heaven from the pulpit? How many of your favorite pastors or thought leaders speak about things like this? And yet, guess what? We're going to spend forever and ever and ever there. This life that we have here, gone. It's like a mist. It's like a vapor, right? It's here. It's gone. It's like the blink of an eye. And the older we get, the more I start to relate with time, the more I believe, wow, that is so true. In fact, a lot of this ministry was geared around the idea of just going, man, I'm out of the fight. What am I doing? Time is running out. I need to make the most of the opportunity. I don't know if I get tomorrow. Every day in the news, there's a story of somebody who ran out of time, and it was unexpected to everybody. We don't know when that last breath is. And so, in light of eternity, I want to prioritize my budget. I want to be intentional with my time because I believe so much in the life to come that I want to go win that race. I want to get everything that I possibly can in the life that is to come. I want to honor God with my wealth. I want to honor God with my time. And I want to honor God with my devotion. And when I fix my eyes on things that are eternal, I start to do that better in every one of these areas. All right? So quick thoughts for you here, but I just want you to think today about your relationship with money. What's it like? Where do you need to adjust? What is your relationship like with time? How intentional are you being with it? And how much time are you spending thinking about eternity? How much time should you be spending thinking about eternity? When you think about eternity, it will change the way that you behave with time and with money. And that's kind of what I hope happens out of this conversation here, that maybe God just spurs something on you to go, you know what, I need to be intentional here. I need to be more focused on what's going to last forever and ever and ever. I need to fix my eyes on Jesus. And that's really what this podcast and this ministry is about, is let's fix and set our attention on him fully. Let's live in light of eternity. Let's not waste any more days, but let's get in the fight and live a bigger and better life. That's my prayer for you, and that's my prayer for me. So go get in the fight, be intentional, prioritize all these things, and live a bigger, better life. Hey guys, thanks so much for being here today and listening to the show. Please be sure to head over to the website at getinthefight.club. And before you go, if you haven't already, please subscribe, click the like button, and leave us a positive 5-star review. It makes a huge difference whenever you do. Have a great day. Go get in the fight.